welcome back. It's the start of another growing year for me anyway, so some will start later, some have already started. So first of all, I hope everyone had a happy Christmas and New Year. So it's time to get cracking again. I've been a bit reluctant because it's been a bit cold and miserable outside. I've not been down to the allotment for a bit. I went down a couple of weeks ago just to look, just to see if there's any damage. Fence a bit, need some repair work, and some of the collies were ready. I need to go down and harvest them. So there might be a video at some point where I nip down and get them so you can see the state of it. But nothing's been done, no raised bed's been built. I've only just started really clearing in the garden down the bottom end. It's just been cold, wet, and energy levels. It's just that time of year after being cooped in through the winter. Sort of get a bit lazy. So you need to sort of pull your finger out and get back on with it. So we're starting off with garlic, which is one of the first things that a lot of people start off with. Also, I'll be doing some onions, which I've never grown before, called Exhibition. I usually grow the Kelseys, but I've not done them this year. Usually with Kelseys, I sow them kind of end of October, November, and I put them under lights. But I wasn't going to grow any of the larger onions this year, but I thought, I've seen these Exhibition ones, I thought I'll give them a go. It's just sow between December and February, so end of January now, more or less. So I'm going to give them a go, and a couple of bell peppers. I'll put everything I'm going to sow, I'll put in the description below so you know the varieties. Some lettuce, some like Vailan it's called. I've never grown that before, but it's supposed to be pretty frost hardy. And I thought, well, I can start it off in windowsills and stuff, and then I can pop it maybe in the raised beds in the polytunnel. Try and get a bit of early lettuce, because nothing gets planted in the raised beds for quite a while yet. So garlic is same as I always grow, Solent white. This is all taken from my own that I've grown last year, and that's been taken for the last probably nearly 10 years. I'm only doing 60 this year. I did 80 last year, so because I've got an idea with some onions at the other end of the bed, so I thought I'll just do 60 this year. So basically I just pulled 5 or 6 bulbs off, and that's the string. So I've still got plenty left from last year. It's going down a treat, and this lasts ages. This will keep till I've had it keep into May, to be honest. But as soon as it starts to go, you can just freeze it. Just peel it and pulp it up with some butter or something, and then just put it in ice cube trays and freeze it like that. So you've got little cubes. Because these won't be ready till July, August when they'll be coming out of the ground. And you can grow them sort of over the winter time, which I have done, but I think from being sat out in the winter all, in exposed damp conditions, just for maybe an extra 3 to 4 weeks, I don't find it's worth it, to be honest. So I think get the ground covered up, and it could kind of get ready, and these won't go up to the plot till probably March. Because don't worry about it when you plant them. When you put them in, that there's nothing going on, because roots will start to grow before you see any top. So I highly advise that when you're putting them in anything. I mean, I use a tray with plenty of holes in, because you want to try and get a lot of air to the bottom of the pot. Because the idea is, because they'll grow big roots, and the roots will start coming out the bottom. So the idea is, if air can get there, they'll sort of think a thing called air prune. So they'll dry off, and it'll encourage more roots to grow inside the pot. Also, what happens sometimes is it can push itself out with the roots. So they need some water, but don't go mad watering this time of year, because obviously if it freezes, they'll go like a block of ice, and not many things like being frozen solid. They can tolerate a bit, but I've never really lost any yet to frost or anything like that. But they need the cold to split into, because obviously you get a bulb of garlic, and that's made up of a series of cloves of garlic. So when you get your bulb, you can buy one from a shop, but I mean, ideally, if you're going to start your own, if you've got someone who grows their own garlic, maybe they'll give you some from last year. You can start one, or just buy one in. It just begins with that, and if you have a good growth, just basically crack a couple of bulbs open, take the cloves off. You can pick your biggest, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. You can go through and pick loads of big cloves and have loads of little ones left over. But I tend to think, you get the fat ones and the thin ones, that they all produce something. And I found sometimes the long thin ones have produced the bigger bulbs for me. They're never going to be uniform and perfect. You know, I mean, last year most of mine were, which was probably a first, to be honest. For some reason, don't do anything different than the other year. So right, we'll crack on. So compost I'm using, there's a little bit of new stuff, just some B&Q's own, and it's some spent compost because we're trying to tighten the budget a bit this year, because I just can't afford much this year at all. So that's going to be a big sort of thing on what I can do this year, is what I can afford to do, because money is very, very tight. So, which is handy when you can grow your own. So I've kind of, you know, trying to use most of my spent compost up. But any compost will do, to be honest, as long as it's not soaking wet, and it's got a little bit of perlite in it, because I haven't got any vermiculite. So I got some perlite, and I just basically bashed it through a sieve, you know, a garden riddle, just to break it down a bit smaller, because it was quite chunky. But you don't have to, as long as you know it can drain okay, you'll be fine. You just multi-purpose compost will be okay. So nothing fancy about doing garlic. It's a bit like you do onion sets, but you plant garlic a little bit deeper. So I'll bring the camera a bit closer so you can see how I do it anyway. Right, so it's a bit of an idea to lay them all on top, because sometimes if you push some in and then cover them over, you think, how far have I got? And you could end up thinking like something's not growing and you've not actually put one in. And yes, that's happened to me before. So 2 ends to your garlic clove. You've got like a bit at the bottom here, which is a flat end. That's called, like, that comes off the thing called the basil plate. So you need to try not to damage that. And obviously the pointy bit comes to the top. If you compost this off, yes, you can press them in, but sometimes it's better to make a hole. And you tend to bury these a little bit below the surface, whereas onion sets you'd bury with the top. Some people cut this little wispy bit off. I've never found an issue. It takes a while to soften up, but the new green tip just bursts through eventually. Like I say, you probably won't see anything from the tops on these for a month to 6 weeks. But you'll see roots poke out the bottom before you see anything at the top. I'll just go along, just simply use my finger, going down to about my knuckle. You know, it's a fair bit. It's nearly down to the bottom of the pot nearly. These are just 3-inch pots. Well, they're 7cm pots actually, so it's not quite 3-inch. I wouldn't like to go any smaller in pots, to be honest. But you don't have to worry about too much about planting really deep now, because when these get planted out, they'll go even deeper. It'll work out so that, like, the top of this ends up about 1 inch below the actual surface of the ground. You know, they do like pretty well draining soil, which my plot isn't, so I have raised beds. Feed, you can prepare your bed with a bit of bloodfish and bone meal, but if you've sort of composted, you know, on top of it and stuff like that, you're like doing a no dig, or it's been manured fairly regular, not too recent. You know, it's okay if you put manure on, you know, in the autumn, because that's on the surface, if you know what I mean. So if you can plant through it, it's not going to burn anything or do any damage. Not too rich, because if it's on the surface, it just slowly gets taken into the soil by the microbes. But like I say, I'm planting these, that basil plate end down, and a little wispy end to the top. Just closing it over the top like that. You will get a bit of a watering now, and I'll probably not water them again for absolutely weeks, because they don't really need a lot of moisture, to be honest. I'm only watering them to bed them in, just to sort of tamper down the compost and to help the bulb stay in, because obviously it tries to grow roots. The roots at the bottom of the pot, and the bulb keeps, you know, coming up. But if it's all sort of stuck down, not so bad. But we are due a hard frost tonight, I think, so I'll leave these in the kitchen tonight. Like I said, I don't need lots of water, because it's like when garlic's kind of past its best anyway, it will generally sprout. If it wants to go somewhere, and this compost will always be, unless if you like leave it bone dry, you know, it will grow roots into it. Don't worry about that. Just give it a bit of water now. Ideally you do this outside, but it's nearly midnight, so I'll get this done inside, and it's absolutely freezing outside, so it's no fun. Well, if your compost sinks down a bit, you can always put a little bit more compost on top. And that's it, really. I might water them again, in a month or something, But you pick it up, and they're not going to dry out really unless you get some serious sunshine on them. They're not going to dry out. On really hard frosty nights, you could encase them in some sort of cardboard or, a bit of fleece over them or bubble wrap. But just bear in mind that if you put something over, it might condensate, and the condensation will freeze. So usually, if you keep things grouped together, they kind of share heat. They can tolerate quite a bit. Garlic is pretty hardy that way. But one thing you don't tolerate is too much water. They can rot off. And like I say, just in a month, maybe you might see some little white roots appearing. But they shouldn't come right, because obviously the bottoms of this are completely open. So airflow can dry the roots off, and so it just forces it to take another root inside the pot to grow into that compost instead. Right, so we'll do some other bits of seeds now. Right, do these onion seeds now. So varieties exhibition. The thing is, onion seeds is they're quite a tough, quite a hard seed, so they tend to lack a bit more moisture. But like I say, don't go mad. Now this is just the same compost I did my garlic in, spent multi-purpose compost with a little bit of fresh stuff in it and some perlite. It's probably about 10 centimetres deep, that, to the bottom of that, and it's been pre-watered, it's been pre-soaked, because they're better off like a lot more water beneath them than putting a load on top of them and sat in the sludge. They're okay, they're sat on top of it because it can still drain, and the moisture will wick through. It's keeping them moist. That word moist means like a wrung out sponge, not anything you want anything dripping or anything like that. So if you get a sponge or a cloth and wring it out as hard as you can, that's as wet as you need anything, because you'll be surprised how dry things will grow in. Right, so just going to sprinkle these, because my main season onions I'm going to do in about a month. I do them in different trays. I'll let these grow, and then I'll prick these out. I'll just put them into something to keep them in for a little bit longer. Put a few more seeds up this end. Not going to do loads of these. I'm sowing plenty, because sometimes, I say you can have problems germinating some onion seeds. But you do leeks exactly the same. You can sow some leeks now if you wanted to. If you've got you could germinate them in, get them fired indoors and then put them in a greenhouse for a few months. I'm just going to cover that with some compost now, so I need my little sieve. Down here. They do like to be a little bit deeper, obviously, so they don't dry out. You don't need to go absolutely mad with them. They're probably one of the only seeds that I tend to do a little bit deeper. Onions. Things like cabbage and lettuce, tomatoes and that. Less is better for them, really. I've got an empty one of these. If I can think on, I'll put the link in the description where you can get these, because they are handy. You can use mushroom punnets or anything like that if you want. I'm just going to do that just to tamper it down. I'm going to give it a tiny bit of water on that. And that'll do for onions. Right, we'll do this lettuce now. So, like I say, it's called Vailan, this one's called. I'll put everything down in the description box. So you can either grow the same, or, just depends. If you've grown things that work for you, carry on growing them. But like I always say, have a little bit of an experiment now and then, try a little new variety or something, even if it's just in a pot. you know, just to see. I mean, most of the things that I grow, you've picked up over years off, you know, other garden or YouTubers and that, you know, what seems to work for them. So you try them and they work for you, great. Same with these, I'm just going to sow them fairly thin, these. Just chop them out. Like I say, these will get pricked out. These should, you know, probably be pricked out in about 3 weeks. These are going to stay on the windowsill. But the thing is with windowsills, they can get too much of a good thing. Too warm, but then there's not enough light, so they end up getting leggy. So ideally, if it's not frosty or cold, give them a little bit of outside daytime. You know, in the warmest spot you can find outside, and then give them darkness. They need a night time. They need that seasonal sort of. They need that night time to shut down. You know, so it's no point having, you know, lights on all day long for them. It doesn't do anything, because as soon as you put them out in sort of March or April, it's a shorter day, and to that might, certain things like onions and that can think, oh, we're on the other side of the year, and that can force them to go to seed. Not as much compost on lettuce seed because it's quite a thin seed. You know, because lettuce will actually just germinate straight on top of compost. So these probably have, you know, maybe 5 mil. That put on top. General thumb is sort of twice the depth of seed, because that's been watered from underneath, and you know they can damp off. So I'm not going to put any more water in that at all, and it won't be watered again until they're actually actively growing. You know, and once they get probably anything, you know, probably maybe 1.5 centimetres high, as long as I can get hold of the leaves. Sometimes lettuce are better pricked out earlier, so they're just small enough they can get hold of them to prick them out, put them in something a bit bigger then. So that's the lettuce. We're just going to go in little propagator trays on the windowsill. Like I say, if you can give them a little bit of daytime outside, even if you've got a bigger propagator, and you can put them in like a propagator inside a propagator just to give them that protection from the elements, but they get that actual natural sunlight, because that's quite important for them. That'll do the peppers now. I'm going, yeah, calling it, I can't see too well because the older label's gone a bit. I think it's Phoebus, Phoebus, and the other one, giant bell pepper from DT Brown's. Did it last year. I think I've only bought about 5 packs of seeds this year. Just using old stock really. It's still in date. Like I say, funds are tight. You know, so I'm kind of growing to a real budget this year, because I'll not be working. I've got care duties now, a little bit more demanding, so my business, my self-employment side of things is a no-go now. So I have a 0 income. So I can grow a lot of food, and that's grateful. You know, that I can get as much as I can out of the ground. And I'm just going to kind of space these, you know, probably nearly 1 inch apart, like so. Kind of on the side. Things with peppers is they look like they're not doing anything. It'll germinate and you'll have this like tiny seedling that doesn't really do anything, but it's growing roots. And when you pot them on in stages, Don't put a tiny plant in a big pot, because it'll just want to fill that. The idea is kind of pot on, you know, the next size or 2 sizes up in pot, and they'll end up probably in something like a 10 to 12 inch pot. Do tomato seeds exactly the same. Yeah, but tomato seeds are a bit quicker on the growing side. I usually sow everything Valentine's Day, you know, the bulk of the stuff, you know, around then. But this year I'm delaying it by a couple of weeks, because last year it was quite cold, you know, well into April, so I'm just going to hold things back a little tad this year, a couple of weeks. And I'm just going to do them so it just about covers them. Same again with that. Not going to get watered because it was watered underneath. Sometimes it's a good thing if you get all your seed trays, water them the day before, and just let them sit and drain. What I will be doing with these is I'll put some capillary matting, which I'll go and get and show you. This is old stuff. It's pretty thin. I've cleaned it in case it had any, you know, mould spores or anything untoward in it. You can buy it, you know, on Amazon or garden centres. I just cut it in a small piece. I'm just going to lay some of that in there, like so, and just wet that, and it'll soak it up. And because it's got a lid on the propagator, it'll act a little bit like a, just keeps the humidity going. Just let that soak into that. You know, and that just keeps the moisture all sort of even throughout. Put my labels in. I need to get some Sharpies because pencil won't do very well. So you start wafting any water near it. You know, the old way used to be like, I used to put a piece of clear sticky tape over it, but I need to get some more Sharpies. So that's that. Just pop them in there like so. And then grab my lid. Simply pop a lid on. I'm going to leave that closed because it's got a little open close. I'll leave that closed so it can kind of humidify through there and everything gets like a, you know, nice even moisture. And just put them on a sunny windowsill. Obviously, if you're on a windowsill and you get a really sunny day, just bear in mind they can scorch. Sometimes you might want to shade them with a little bit of netting, or sometimes a newspaper. You know, you can put a bit of newspaper over them just to take the main direct sunshine off, because if you get direct light going in there, it can kill seedlings. You know, if it's too sunny. But like I said, this time of year, depending on your location, the sun doesn't get really high enough and much power in it. But it's that time of year, you can start things. You just got to be careful. And there's like anything, you start a bit earlier, there's a risk it can go wrong quite easily. But you've got time to start again. Right, so that's it for this update. So next one will probably be, I might do, if I take a trip to the allotment in a couple of weeks, I'll probably do a little update from there. Other than that, it's going to be February now, probably another 3 weeks, something like that. I'll be doing my other onions, my main onions, probably starting some brassicas off, the Hilda's mixed sweet peas, starting them off in a few weeks. Like I say, I mean, any time sort of second half of February, I'll be starting them. Just because that way then I know they'll be ready to plant second half of April. A lot of things can go out then, which will then free up the polytunnel to sow the frost tender stuff, which is like obviously courgettes, cucumbers, things like that, and sweet corn, and the beans, because if you sow them too early, like runner beans, they don't like cold at all. So anything like that, the frost tender, they don't get sown until end of April and into May, which is also when you start thinking about sowing your overwinter stuff. You know, so we're just starting off now, and then you're not long, and you've got to start thinking what I'm going to do for later on in the year. But fingers crossed we get a decent summer, and everything will be okay again. So thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next video. See you now, bye bye.